This Tuesday, the day the world has been waiting for. A day that could shape the very future as we know it. A day the nation will hold its breath as we finally reveal if the Chargers will make a blockbuster trade. The NFL trade deadline, this Tuesday at 4 p.m. Eastern.
Get in on the action this season with Underdog's Pick'em game. Select higher or lower between 2 and 8 players and compete for up to 325 times your entry. Use code DIRECTOR when signing up to receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash and a free pick. Go to Bolt fam, it's the Director. Chargers fans, we're coming into another Victory Monday. On this episode, dude, watch out, man. Here come the Chargers, dude. 5-3. Jim Harbaugh's got this team on a roll. The defense has been absolutely absurd. We're seeing the emergence of young receivers and players like Quinton Johnson and Ladd McConkey last week. We got some awesome rookies on defense, and it's just, I don't know, it's all starting to come together for the Chargers, and it couldn't be at a better time as we are officially at the midpoint of the season. The Bolts at 5-3 officially have matched their wins from last season under Brandon Staley just halfway through the year. And it's only going to get better from here, man. It's going to be an interesting episode today. Not only we're going to talk about this game, the Chargers and Browns, which ended up being an awesome way to win this football game, but also the implications that it has via trade. The Chargers and their chances at making a trade after this win, now being 5-3, have gone up tremendously, in my opinion. I think the odds of them making a move by tomorrow are actually pretty solid, and that's going to be another big portion of this video. We're going to talk trades one more time, man. Just under the wire before the trade deadline on Tuesday, who may be coming to the Bolts. Before we do kick this thing off, man, shout out to the sponsor, Underdog. Use code DIRECTOR to receive bonus cash up to $1,000. Newcomers, definitely take advantage of the special on screen. It's a great way to support my platform, have some fun along the way, and really elevate the fun with football, man. Before we do kick off, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. A small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's get into it. Lights, camera, action.
Who's got it better than us?
The Chargers at Browns post-game report / we're going to talk trade deadline a lot in this video. I got a whole lot of players I need to talk to you guys about in terms of trade scenarios. But first off, man, we have to acknowledge what's going on here with the Chargers. It's something that all of us have, as fans, especially you've been here a while, right? The Phillip Rivers days and previous, all of us fans have been waiting for this for a very, very long time. The change of culture, the change of identity, and the leadership in a head coach that spells the confidence of all their players, all of the fan base, and really all of the NFL. Jim Harbaugh is absolutely for real. And what's crazy is that you saw a little bit of foundations shook and questions arisen with the first half of the Chargers, year not being as dominant as everybody wanted it to see. But honestly, guys, you have to take a real look at this team. You have to take, despite who the opponents may be or what the situation may be in terms of how's the offense looking, yada, yada, yada. If there's one thing for certain, that if you disagree, you'd be lying to yourself. If there's one thing for certain that the Chargers have been doing this season is getting better every single week. And sometimes it's hard to notice because, the injury situation for the Chargers has been interesting this season as they've been extra careful, the precautions that they've taken, a lot of guys sitting out and coming back in. But when you really take a hard look at every single week, the Chargers have been just so good defensively and getting better. The offense, which really struggled at the top of the season, is now seeing very consistent, 250 to 300-yard passing days by Justin Herbert, really leaning back into the strength of this team. The identity is becoming more and more obvious as we've gotten to the midpoint of the season now in terms of what they're going to be for the rest of the season. A lot of us expecting this run-first offense, ground and pound team. And it really has shifted gears since, I'm going to say, the bye week. The bye week for me was a pretty important one for this team. It was Jim Harbaugh went in and said, hey, dude, things aren't working. He maybe, had a powwow with Greg Roman, and they figured they're going to go back to whatever this team needs in order to be successful in offense. And Justin Herbert, despite missing Keenan Allen, despite missing Mike Williams and a whole lot of change in front of him, is really starting to look like the Justin Herbert of old. And it all kind of stems back to who Jim Harbaugh is, his success rate as a coach, not just through the NFL, but in college and in pretty much his entire life, right? This man is built to win football. And honestly, dudes, as I was getting ready to shoot this video and do my research, I got choked up a little bit, man. I've waited a majority of my life for this. I've waited a majority of my life for the Chargers to finally have the leadership that it takes to change from what we were into a championship caliber team. And for the first time in my life, I believe it. And for the first, well, I wouldn't say that, but I would also, because I've always believed it, right? But for the first time in my life, there's really no arguing who the leadership is what I should say. I really have no shaken foundation as who my head coach should be. Jim Harbaugh is for real. We are heading into a very bright future with this team. And yes, a 5-3 record in his first season with the Chargers, while really having to retool this offense and retool this roster and instill a new culture, is very impressive. And they're only getting better. So get ready, Bolt fam. This is the beginning of a very bright future for the Chargers and this organization and its fan base, who have very deservedly been waiting a long time for something like this to happen. Like we mentioned, a very big reason why we're seeing the success that we're seeing in the Chargers offense is largely due in part to Justin Herbert. Dude, we are so back. How many games, or I should say how many plays in this game did we see a classic Justin Herbert, we call them H-bombs, passes 20 yards or longer, man. We saw a lot of them. And we're starting to see this Herbert confidence come back, where he's not only making good decisions, but making more of them. He's finding his new chemistry with these young wide receivers and Quinton Johnson, who we'll talk about in just a second. Ladd McConkey had an awesome breakout game last week. It feels like the confidence, the trust, the consistency, the understanding of his teammates, it's all really started to gel at this point of the season. And my, oh my, is the offense really starting to fire on all cylinders, man. You see Herbert out there having fun, seeing success, winning football games. This is what Jim Harbaugh has been harping about all offseason. This is the quarterback he came to LA to coach. He's kind of been, I don't know, shaking off the rust or getting up to speed, in the first half of the season. It took him, I'm going to say, a solid 4 games before the bye week. That wasn't Justin Herbert. That was some version of Justin Herbert that was still getting adjusted. Week 6 and on, this is the Justin Herbert we all know and love, man. He has been absolutely on fire, throwing for 200, 300 yards a game behind a very new and fresh roster, new faces everywhere. This is what we came here to see, man. Herbert's out here. And he's honestly, one thing I wanted to mention before we move on, because we got a lot of players that we got to talk about. Herbert's confidence is so sky high right now. You're seeing him run a lot, which you didn't see a lot in the top of the season, obviously, because of the plantar fascia, or whatever you want to call it, the foot injury, right? That was definitely something that we didn't see a lot at the top of the season. And now we're starting to see, semblances of what Greg Roman likes to do with his quarterback, but also what Justin Herbert is as a quarterback. We're seeing that success translate into the offense right now. And man, it is so fun to be a Chargers fan again, seeing how much fun the offense is turning out to be. Yes, there was a dry spell in the third and maybe a bit of the fourth quarter. The second half needs a little bit of work. But as compared to what this offense has been previous, in scoring and in terms of momentum and all that stuff, 27 points is awesome, man. Especially versus the Browns, who don't have a bad defense. They're not the best in the NFL, but they got Myles Garrett. The dude got 3 sacks in 3 plays straight in that game yesterday. And despite that, the Chargers, Justin Herbert, they're looking a lot better. And they're just going to get better, man. DJ Chark's coming back next week, more than likely. The chemistry with Ladd McConkey's looking awesome. That leads us into our next topic right here. Actually, we're going to go to this right here. Quinton Johnson, man. Quinton Johnson, welcome to the Chargers. Finally, man, I am so flippin' proud of QJ right now, man, with all of the noise and all of the doubt and all of the honestly shade being thrown at number one for a whole year, man. There were people that didn't want Quinton Johnson on the roster after last season and his rookie season. Despite all of that, I think we can all agree that he's in, lack of a better term, broken out in this game. Whether it's broken out to be, Chargers wide receiver 1 kind of numbers, what I'm going to assume is probably going to be more like Chargers solid wide receiver 2 numbers going forward. He's here, and he's contributing, and he's making big plays, and he's stretching the field, and he's creating room underneath. He's doing things that helps this Justin Herbert offense operate. And it's so refreshing to see, finally the passing offense see that confidence back in Herbert, and it's largely due in part to the talent and confidence of the receivers. Herbert trusts these guys. I saw a lot of passes from Herbert. I'll say actually especially towards Ladd McConkey in this game that I was used to seeing him throw to Keenan Allen because they had such a chemistry, such a trust. They could read each other's minds in terms of where the ball needs to be and where he needs to be as a receiver. That's why Keenan and Herbert worked so well. I'm starting to see a bit of that in Ladd McConkey and Justin Herbert. And in terms of Quinton Johnson, which is even more interesting, because I'm not going to say quite like, his chemistry is like what he had with Mike Williams. I mean, maybe in some part, yeah, that one pass that was on the sideline that went all the way to the end zone, which was absolutely fantastic. That definitely reminded me of that. But there's a new kind of chemistry forming as well with Quinton Johnson, understanding what he is, trying to give him the ball, knowing the yards are going to be coming afterwards. It actually kind of reminds me a little bit more of what we had with Austin Eckler, which is kind of funny, right? I really, really do like what Quinton Johnson is turning into, and the ability for the Chargers offense to finally start making defenses pay for playing down low too aggressively. Because that's been a big problem for this offense all season long, is that defenses, and I've mentioned this in my past 2 or 3 videos, defenses, you watch every single week leading up to this game, defenses are all playing low because they want to take away those check downs. They want to take away the flat. They want to take away the hitch. They want to take away what Justin Herbert's bread and butter has been with Austin Eckler and Keenan Allen the past 4 or 5 years. Not anymore. Justin Herbert with the last couple of weeks, hitting Josh Palmer a couple of times deep, hitting Ladd McConkey last week, hitting now Quinton Johnson deep. People, coaches, and the coordinators, they're all going to start seeing this new tape saying, hey, man, we can't quite be playing as low as we've been, or as teams have been this year at Justin Herbert, because he's starting to really hit, that area of the field a lot more consistently, and those big plays are becoming more available. And that is finally what the Chargers have been trying to build, paying off. They want to run the football and create opportunities for big plays. Well, the big plays are here, and they're coming. Sure, they still got to work on running the football a little bit better, but Quinton Johnson, Ladd McConkey, the talent and the trust, the reliability of these receivers is really unlocking that vision for the offense, which is so refreshing to see. Welcome back, Justin Herbert. Welcome to the NFL, Ladd McConkey, and welcome year 2, bounce back story in Quinton Johnston, man. Now let's get into the bread and meat and potatoes of this video, man. We're talking trade. About 10, 12 minutes in, right? We're talking trade. Because I think, oh, by the way, this is actually the slide right here. We'll get to the trade just in 1 second. Last thing we got to mention. This defense is absurdly good. Yeah, we'll get to the trade here in just 1 second. You cannot make a Chargers video anymore without mentioning just how absurdly good this defense has been. The number 1 defense in the NFL belongs to the Chargers. That title is in LA. The last LA team to do that was the Rams, and they won the Super Bowl. And I don't know about you guys. Yeah, their offense looked a little bit better, but there's some similarities here. We don't have Aaron Donald. We don't have Cooper Kupp and all that kind of stuff, but we're building towards something like that. And a big reason why we're going to talk about trade here in just a second is because of this very fact. If you have the best defense in football, which what's the old mantra? Defenses win championships. If you have the best defense in football, you do not waste that opportunity to try and make a run. Sure, I don't know if I still am convinced the Chargers, make a super deep playoff run, but I am very confident they do make the postseason. And if you're Joe Ortiz and you're Jim Harbaugh and you're especially Jesse Minter, you're looking at this team and saying, hey, we have this awesome season in front of us already. We're very proven as a consistent, dangerous defense. We got to throw down a little bit. We got to capitalize a little bit. Because you pair a top 10, top 5 quarterback in Justin Herbert with the best defense in football, you have as good a shot as anybody at the championship, realistically, right? It's time to throw down. And that's why I think this win in particular, combined, with the awesome defense and all that kind of stuff, I think this win blasted the doors open for a trade. For a couple of different reasons, okay? I mentioned this on my Bleacher Report episode yesterday. For one, the Chargers, and this is something all of us kind of expect, right? The Chargers, let's say they go into this game, things aren't quite clicking, we don't quite know what's going on. We almost saw this happen. Myles Garrett wrecks the game, and we walk out 4-4. Yikes, we're even, whatever. We'll adjust and go hit the Titans next week. In that instance, I'm thinking, maybe a trade isn't quite as likely. We're still really figuring stuff out. Gonna take a minute. We're not quite there yet in terms of understanding the roster. Instead, the Chargers do go into Cleveland, play, again, not a bad team. Decent defense. And they whoop their butt. They don't just beat the Cleveland Browns. They beat them down. This is very similarly to how we talked about the win versus the Panthers and other teams. Like, it's not good enough just to go win those games. Like Chargers in the past survived those games. You're seeing this game in a different, lens. If Brandon Staley was still here, if the Chargers do still win this game, it's going to be what? 27 to 26 to 25. Like, you're going to barely survive. No, the Chargers are actually winning these games the way good teams are supposed to win these games. They beat down the Panthers. They beat down the Browns. If you're a lesser team, you're getting beat down. Sure, we struggled against some pretty good teams, like, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs. The Steelers are very underrated, very good team as well. But we definitely were not out of those games. Those games were close, right? And we were still very early in the season figuring things out. Well, now the Chargers at 5-3, halfway through the season, really have a much better understanding of the roster, where the strengths and weaknesses reside. And guess what? Being well above 500, being 5-3 at this point, that's a good number. That's a good number to invest in. That's a good time of the season to really say, hey, this is the ins and outs of the roster. This is what the weaknesses are. This is what the strengths are. And this is where we can make a move to take some positions and some, aspects of the team over the top. I think the Chargers, obviously, the defense is exactly where you want it to be. That defense is insanely good. You help the offense out a little bit. You get that up to speed a little bit. You get that up to par a little bit. Just imagine. And yes, the Chargers are in a position where they can go out and trade. We got compensatory picks coming down the pipeline pretty soon. We're going to have multiple 7th and 6th round picks, maybe even a 5th this upcoming year. Maybe even higher. I don't remember. You got $100 million in cap next season. Let's go get a guy. Let's make a run this year because there's positions that the Chargers need. Now, for one, big position everybody keeps talking about, wide receiver. I'm actually at the point now, dudes, where I'm asking myself, do we need a wide receiver? I mean, yes, I still think the answer to that question is still pretty firmly yes, but the fact that that's shaken a little bit just tells you how much of a corner the positions turned in this last couple of weeks. Ladd McConkey in that breakout game, holy crap, do I feel like we have a wide receiver 1 all of a sudden. Quinton Johnson in his breakout game, holy crap, do I feel like we got a wide receiver 2 all of a sudden. Now you're thinking to yourself, okay, who's that third guy? Is it going to be DJ Chark when he comes back? It could be, and that's a big part of this equation too. Is DJ Chark the guy the Chargers want to bet on, or do they want to go trade for someone? There's a very good opportunity, or a very good, a real possibility that DJ Chark is the guy. And again, I saw him in person in training camp, and he did look very good. Like, if you were to connect, Mike Williams and DJ Chark, like, I wouldn't think they play or contribute too much different, right? But the big reason I would want Mike Williams is so you have a little bit more insurance, because both of those guys' health, right, has been in question. But even the fact that we're asking that question, do we really need a wide receiver at this point, is a really good sign. The Chargers have built and developed, and they look a lot better now than they did at the top of the season for a receiver. Do they not? I would think they do. Here are some of the trade candidates as we go down this list, man. We got all kinds of positions. Of course, wide receiver probably being the biggest one everybody's looking for. I still think it's not a bad move, especially if you're looking to make a big move that's not just for this year, but for the future. There are a couple of moves on this list that are a little bit more focused on this year. It's because they have such a little risk to reward factored in there, like Mike Williams. Mike Williams, what are those examples where he's going to cost pennies on the dollar? I think a couple $1 million, if that, prorated at this point. He's going to cost like a 7th-round pick later down the road. Like, really, you're not giving up a lot to get Mike Williams on this roster, and he basically provides DJ Chark insurance. You can play both of those guys on the outside if you have to, which right now the Chargers only really have that one option on the outside in terms of that archetype. Yeah, you can. They've started to use, Ladd McConkey and Quinton Johnson on the outside a little bit, but that's not really what they're designed for. Getting 2 guys on this roster all of a sudden that really open up the perimeter, that could be very dangerous. So Mike Williams has to be on this list. And we're going to move a little quicker than normal because I got a lot of names on this list, and we don't want this video to be an hour long. The next guy that we've been hearing rumblings about. Have I covered this in my videos previously? This might be the first time. DK Metcalf. I know I talked about this last season. Maybe that's why I'm getting a little confused here. But it's always because DK Metcalf is always like the big rumor every season. Like, are the Seahawks finally going to do it? Is the contract not going to make sense? Which right now it sounds like the contract especially doesn't make sense in terms of guaranteed money, right? I do think I covered it because there was a rumor like a week ago that the Chargers were in some way, shape, or form connected to DK Metcalf because his former wide receivers coach in Seattle is now with the Chargers, Sanjay Lal. He is now with the Bolts, and they have a really good relationship. And the Chargers have the capital to help DK Metcalf reach goals and financially in terms of guaranteed money, yada, yada, yada. This would be a big, big swing for the Bolts. Because all of a sudden, you got wide receiver 1, boom, instantly, DK Metcalf. You got wide receiver 2, Ladd McConkey, and you can maybe even see wide receiver 2B in Quinton Johnson, and an awesome veteran to help lead the way for those young guys. Like, it's a great, great move if you want a wide receiver right now for the future. And that really fits what you're trying to do in LA. Because if you guys, just looking at the guy, right? But you guys know his reputation. This is a very physical wide receiver, very strong, very good in blocking. This guy would definitely help you out setting up the edge if you needed to, right? Like, he could play tight end if you wanted. He's a big dude, exactly what the Chargers are looking for. Sure, he would be expensive. I would say the very cheapest you're going to get DK Metcalf, and I'm trying to be like realistic here, is probably a 2nd-round pick that's conditional, right? It turns into a 1st-round pick if certain goals are met by DK Metcalf, which is what ultimately you're going to kind of want anyway, right? So DK Metcalf has to be on this list. The instant wide receiver 1, that would be awesome. Another guy that's kind of been talked about these last couple of days has been Tyreek Hill. And this one I struggle with a little bit. I'm not going to lie to you guys. The thought of Tyreek Hill on the Chargers, yes, is certainly extremely exciting because of the thought of what you can get when you pair him with Justin Herbert's arm. We've all thought about this, and we've all talked about this. Oh, it sucks that Hill is on the Dolphins. Tua's got this noodle arm, and how is he going to stretch the field? And that speed is being wasted. Well, all of that could become a possibility for the Chargers. And I'm going to say Tyreek Hill / Jalen Waddle, because both of these guys have kind of been started to be talked about and mentioned to me, at least in the last couple of days, just because of how bad the Miami Dolphins have been, and where contracts could be looking at and what Tua's future is going to be. Like, a lot of uncertainty in Miami, which could cause them to sell and maybe move off of some big contracts. Do I think they move off of Hill? I don't know. I don't think so. Waddle could be, right? He's not quite the superstar that Tyreek Hill is, but he could be with a Justin Herbert. But to me, this one, again, Tyreek Hill, I'm a Chargers fan, okay? I watched this dude chew our defense up for years in Kansas City. I still hold a little bit of a grudge there, I suppose. He is 30 years old. The Chargers don't like to pay, at least right now, very early. We don't really have all the pieces to determine this yet, but they were definitely not about paying a 30-plus-year-old wide receiver a whole lot of money. I don't know if they're going to shake that foundation, even for a guy like Tyreek Hill, but maybe Jalen Waddle. Because, mind you, Tyreek Hill is going to cost like $30 million a season. We can afford it, which is crazy, but I don't know if I want to pay that for a 30-year-old wide receiver, even if his name is Tyreek Hill. Does that make sense? I don't know. Another good option if you guys are looking for a speedster, Jalen Waddle, by the way, is somebody that I would entertain. Is Darius Slayton. We talked about him a little bit already, too. Won't spend too much time on him. Honestly, yeah, he's in a wide receiver room that's already being dominated by Malik Neighbors in his rookie season. They're obviously not going to be doing much this year. They're definitely going to be seller contenders, and Slayton who could certainly be utilized better on another squad, is probably the most likely player to be moved. Him, and I think it was Azeez Ojulari on defense. Those are the two guys that have been talked about the most, and the Chargers would make a lot of sense for Darius Slayton, but we already talked a lot about him. And then we've also already talked a lot about this next guy in T. Higgins. If you guys want more information on these guys, please go check out my previous trade videos. I want to make some room for some of the guys that we haven't talked quite as much about. But I will say that T. Higgins, in terms of my favorite wide receivers, not named DK Metcalf, because I think DK would be such a great fit for what you want in the run game as well. T. Higgins, I haven't looked at his run block grade. I have to go take a look at that. But he is the perfect archetype for what you want in a wide receiver one, right? He's maybe not quite at the level of prestige as a DK Metcalf, but he could be just as lethal in the right, offense as a wide receiver one. When he's been given the reins, let's say, Jamar Chase hasn't been playing and it's been him and Joe Burrow, like Higgins puts up, man. He's a wide receiver one in this league. If the Bengals decide to move on, which again, I don't know if that's going to be the case. The only reason it would be is because of the contract and they would get a nice return via picks. I would want the Chargers to be involved in negotiations, because I do believe that T. Higgins and Justin Herbert would tear this league, apart. They would be awesome together. All right. Now there's a lot of other wide receivers to consider. Not enough time to cover them all, but it is a position I think the Chargers should absolutely entertain. The biggest position, however, I want the Chargers to attack. You guys already know this. I've been talking so much about this on social media, so much about this in my videos, is tight end. Because right now, yes, I think you can fit a wide receiver like Mike Williams, maybe even Darius Slayton, someone that's not going to cost a whole lot of money. You can still go get a guy. And mind you, you still have DJ Chark coming, right? But there is a position that I think is so flying under the radar for the Chargers right now that would be such a tremendous help for Justin Herbert, and that is tight end. We haven't really gotten to see Justin Herbert with a good tight end outside of Hunter Henry in that one season and the Pro Bowl with Mark Andrews, right? And both of those instances, he was kind of going bananas. I want that back. As a Chargers fan that watches Justin Herbert every single week, I can feel it in my gut, dude. You give this man a top tight end in the league, it's going to get crazy. And right now, my favorite option, which we've talked a whole lot about, is David Njoku. And a big reason why this win on Sunday was so important is not only the Chargers being 5-3 increases our chances of actually making a trade, but by squishing the Cleveland Browns and putting the flame out of their hopes for the season, they all of a sudden become very likely sellers. And bing, bang, boom, ipso facto, the Chargers should be doing business with the Browns. I love the idea of them doing business with the Browns. There's a whole lot of Browns that I would be going after at this point because they just fit what the Chargers are trying to do very beautifully. And David Njoku, fantastic receiver, very underrated blocker. Him and Justin Herbert, what is the word now? Would feed families. This would be one of the top connections in quarterback tight end in the league. I almost guarantee it. David Njoku, 28 years old, hitting that stride in terms of tight end development. This is my dude. This is my number one. Pick up the phone, make it happen. He may not even be available. I don't care, Joe. Go get him. And the Browns got to move players, by the way. They don't got a choice. Because of the Deshaun Watson contract, they have to move some players. Whether it's Njoku or other contracts or whatever, it's going to happen. I guarantee it. Let's make it happen for the Chargers via David Njoku. A couple other tight ends I like. We've already talked a lot about Mark Andrews. Of course, there's a lot of connection there. The Chargers molding the team after the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens, they already have an up-and-coming tight end in Likely. Of course, they're probably going to be running two tight ends anyway, so I don't know what the legitimate availability is of Mark Andrews, but he could be a guy the Chargers try and pry away. He would be an awesome fit. Another guy that's been actually mentioned to the Chargers these past couple of weeks has been Evan Ingram. Okay, this is actually something that has been whispered of, not just on my channel. This actually would be pretty solid. He doesn't fit what we were quite looking for in terms of a run blocker, but this is a heck of a receiver in terms of tight end. The Jags are in the same way this season. Like, man, it's done. They're over. They're cooked. Let's go pick up some of their players. And there's a couple of players on this list from the Jacksonville Jaguars that I have my eye on. But I think sneakily Evan Ingram could be a really, really good target. Maybe not the run blocker we're looking for, but he actually has really good pass blocking numbers. And then obviously he's a really good passing, or I should say receiving tight end. in this offense, minimum, him, David Njoku, and one more guy on this list are a very minimum 800-yard, 4 or 5 touchdown tight ends in this offense. Maybe more, right? Evan Ingram would be awesome for this team. And I would be willing to give up something for it, like a third-round pick, right? I think that sounds pretty realistic. That's what David Njoku, the asking price is right now. Some are even saying a fourth that's conditional that can turn into a third-rounder if some conditions are met. I would be very about Evan Ingram. Hunter Henry, reuniting with him has been talked a lot about too. I don't know how likely that is. Hunter Henry, if you guys remember back in the day, seemed very eager to get out of LA for whatever reason. It is what it is, but hey, he would fit the mold beautifully. And of course, Kyle Pitts. Again, I don't know the likeliness of the Falcons moving on from Kyle Pitts, even though he has largely in part just underwhelmed given his reputation coming into the league. I don't care. I'd probably still give up a first for him. Like, hey, maybe a second now, but like, again, like he hasn't just imagine this man with a quarterback talent that isn't named Kirk Cousins or whatever wash version he is now. And then all the other quarterbacks that have been out there in Atlanta. Yeah. Give me Kyle Pitts. Last couple of guys to mention, and these are some names that have been floating around in connection to the Chargers. Greg Newsome, who again just watched the Chargers squash the Browns. He's actually mentioned in some of his interviews in locker room and stuff like that how much he loves Justin Herbert, how much he respects and is impressed by Justin Herbert's talent and ability and arm. He could be somebody on the move that could make his way over to the Chargers, who definitely need help at cornerback a little bit. Not because they're lacking talent. The Chargers are insanely deep at the position, but just because there's been a lot of injuries and you're probably still looking for that corner one to step in, especially with the whole Asante Samuel Jr. contract coming up next season. Something to consider. If you're really looking for a guy now that's dominant, Marshon Lattimore is the dude. The Saints season is donezo. It is so bad out there in New Orleans, man. They hit the reset switch this morning. Dennis Allen got fired again as a Chargers fan. That's hilarious. Him and Derek Carr. Wherever Derek Carr goes, coaches' careers burn. And this time, it's Allen. And again, they're going to have, I don't know as much of a fire sale, but they need to hit the reset button desperately. Not just in fact of their coaching and all that kind of stuff, but they have some of the worst situation in terms of cap you're going to find in the whole league. And they could definitely unload some contracts. Marshon Lattimore is still, in my opinion, one of the most talented corners in the NFL. He's consistently been that his entire career. I would give up fourth, third, conditional, whatever, to get Marshon Lattimore. Another guy that's getting a lot of buzz from the Saints has been Chase Young. And the Chargers are in an interesting situation here. Chase Young is still, for the memes, young, right? Ironically, like he's still a young dude. It has a lot of untapped potential, and the Chargers just kind of feel like that team where it's like, hey, get over here, man. How many Titans have we resurrected careers so far, right? How many Titans have come? Elijah Molden, Christian Fulton have looked fantastic. T.R. Tart has looked fantastic. These guys who had pretty high profiles have been resurrected and brought back to life in the Chargers defense. Get Chase Young over here, dude. I'm actually kind of psyched about this idea. Let's get Chase Young over here to maybe mix in with Thule and Mack and Bosa, because that whole situation with the Chargers pass rushing, this is more of a move you make for the future. Khalil Mack's contract is expiring this year. I hope that we actually extend him. He's been an ageless wonder. I would love to see a couple more seasons of him, but I'm as big of a Bosa fan as I am, and this hurts me to say. I realistically think this is the last season that Joey Bosa is with the Chargers. You're going to want, that cornerstone position to remain consistent in the future. I think a move like Chase Young makes a lot of sense for the Chargers. I kind of do want to go get this guy. He's one of the guys that gets me kind of excited. Okay. The interior needs a lot of help. Dalvin Tomlinson of the Browns, he had actually a pretty good game versus the Chargers. I would love to see the interior defensive line get, a shot in the arm a little bit. And somebody that could really help for the now and the future. Dalvin Tomlinson's also a really good option. And then you got older guys that are kind of more for this season and this season alone. Calais Campbell. Dude is 37, 38 years old and still playing like flipping crazy. And again, he's a huge system fit for the Chargers. Of course, Calais Campbell had some seasons with the Ravens where he was awesome. He'd be an awesome fit with this team. And then finally, I'm going to mention this because you guys will rip my head off if I don't. And I'm going to explain why I didn't put a whole bunch of players at this position here in a second. But I also think the Chargers, maybe not a bad idea to kick the tires on Brandon Sheriff, who is currently with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, this is a guard in the NFL. And you guys are going to be like, Director, where are the guards? Where's the interior offensive line? They've been one of the biggest weaknesses on the team. I understand that, and I'm about it, and I completely agree. I think this is something the Chargers could, should, and maybe would move on in terms of position. But for one, it's so rare to see quality offensive linemen moved at the trade deadline. Like, you see so few of them every year, and it's usually kind of expensive. And two, the reason you kind of see that is because it takes a while for that position to really sync up, right? To get the chemistry going and to understand one another. That's why you usually see a flurry of moves in the offseason. They see the entire summer together, trying to build that chemistry, and then they're ready to go by the season. You add one in the middle of the year, it may take them up until the postseason to get up to speed. Not to say that I don't think Brandon Sheriff wouldn't be an upgrade, right? I think he'd be awesome. And I do think he'd be an instant upgrade over guys like Trey Pipkins, like that. But I don't know if it's going to be as big of an impact as everybody was hoping for. If he doesn't have the time to acclimate in the Chargers offensive line, right? But you never know. We got a really good offensive line coaching staff, so we could be exceptions. And we got Jim friggin' Harbaugh of all people, so I'm definitely not opposed to it. Just not a lot of names out there. I'm not hearing a lot. That Cam Robinson trade to the, oh my gosh, where'd he go? The Vikings, you don't see that very often. And I don't know if the Chargers will be able to pry anybody away. But hey, you never know. Maybe offensive linemen are all just swooning at the thought of going to play for Jim Harbaugh, which I'm sure that's the number one destination for most offensive linemen in the league. Well, guys, we did it. We're under 40 minutes. Whoop, whoop. And we talked everything about trades and what the Chargers should be doing and all the players that are on my radar. Of course, we have missed a whole slew of players that could be a possibility. I bet you there's a very real possibility that the Chargers do make a trade and not one player on this list was the player traded for. Completely fine with that. But I do hope the Chargers actually do make a trade, that it does make an impact, and that they don't give up on a season where they have the number one defense and a top 5 quarterback. That's the recipe for championships. And I would please ask you guys to also declare which players you hope the Chargers go after, and maybe even predict some of the players, if the Chargers do make a trade, who ends up with the bolts. And we'll see if somebody's right at the end of the day. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Isn't the Chase Young thing interesting? I think it's very interesting. I kind of want to do that.